Hi, I'm Aletha of Ribbons and Zippers. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to show you just how to make this beautiful dress. This is a satin cowl neck with a pleated chiffon skirt that I've created. It is awesome. I think that you're going to love it, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to get right into it. This black satin cowl neck midi dress is perfect for any occasion, such as a black tie occasion, but you can create it in any color that you want. I love it. So if you stick with me, I'm going to show you just how I created this gorgeous dress. Now, in a previous video, I showed you how I draped the cowl neck, and if you go ahead and check out the video, you can see how it's done. It's very easy and I think you'll enjoy it. So go check that out. So for this dress, I did create a pattern for the drape, and I want to create an attached facing for my cowl neck. So I'm going to use the fabric here and then go ahead and just adjust it. I'm going to measure 5 inches from my fold and then trim off the excess. Next, I tape my drape down to my pattern paper. I want to make sure that the center front grain is straight. Then I use my needle wheel to trace all of my markings, my outline, my pleats, my cowl facing, and my center front line. Now I can remove my tape. And I'm just going to check to make sure that I can see my needle wheel markings. Okay, so now what I've done is trace my center front grain line that I created with my pinwheel. And if you'd like, you can do this before you tape your drape down. Now that I know my grain line is right on point, I'm going to continue tracing my pinwheel markings. At this point, I want to make sure that both sides are exactly the same. Don't cut the pattern out, just cut it away from the paper so that you can fold it on the grain line. Now what I like to do is see the lines through my pattern paper. So what I'm going to do is trace my dotted lines with a black Sharpie, so you can see that as well. Now when I fold my pattern, I can see that both sides are a little off, but that's okay. That's why I jotted down the measurements. Now I can use these measurements to true my pattern, including the waist. And don't forget, you always want to square a line from the center and then curve the waist. I see that my fold lines are perfect, so I'm going to leave them just as they are. Now I'm going to straighten the edge of the facing, but I'm going to wait until I add my seam allowance before I true the sides. I'm going to go with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's normally what I use. But before I make my seam allowance, I want to kiss or marry my notches. That's important. I do that by folding my paper on my fold line and make sure that the notches match. Now I can tape it down and now make my seam line. And when I remove my tape, I can see where my seam line goes. It's not always this straight. Sometimes it will be a little curved, but doing this way definitely helps to get the seam line correct. Now I can go ahead and cut out my pattern. Remember, I did not add a seam allowance to my facing, and in a minute I'm going to show you why. Now that it's cut out, I'm going to fold it across the neckline. Now as you can see, the facing sticks out. Now it's much easier to see where the seam line goes. You see? So I'm going to use my ruler and trace. What I also noticed is that I would like the end of the facing to come down to my side seam. So I'm going to go ahead and use my paper to add a few inches. Okay, so here we have it. This is my front bodice. This is my facing. Here's my top, here's my side seam, here's my pleats. So now I'm going to darken my lines and add my pattern notes. Now that I have my front bodice, now I have to go ahead and create my back bodice. So if you're working on your own dress and you have your own bodice sloper, you can go ahead and use it. Or you can check out my video here, how to draft a bodice sloper. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and use the measurements that I have. So if you plotted out your bodice sloper, it will look similar to this. And normally I would draw in my armhole, but it really doesn't matter because I'm only concerned with the back bottom portion. But I'm just going to go ahead and freehand it in. It's just for a reference point. So I have my back bottom portion. So the first thing I want to do is get a midpoint, which is about 3.5 inches. And I'll square straight down. So it's about 3.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and square straight down. Now I'm going to create my dart by measuring a 1/2 inch on both sides of my line. And then I'm just going to create a dart. And then measure from the waist 1/2 of an inch as well and go ahead and create another dart. This is what is going to shape my bodice. Now let's make a couple of notches. Now I'll just go ahead and darken this up so you can see here what I'm doing. Now I don't want my back to be completely straight, so I'm going to go ahead and create a slight curve, just like this. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my skirt. And just as with the bodice, I have an awesome video that shows you how to create a skirt sloper. So if you need to watch it, go ahead and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I have all my pattern pieces ready to go. I need to mention that you will also need to cut a center front pattern piece as well. So I have my center front, I have my center back, my side back, and my front cowl. I also have my skirt front and my skirt back. So now I am going to cut everything out, add my seam allowances, and make a mock-up. Since the mock-up came out perfect, I moved on to laying out the pattern pieces onto my satin fashion fabric first. I cut out my cowl front, my center back, and my side back, and I put those to the side. For my lining, interlining, and interfacing, I cut out center front, center back, and side back. Okay, so first I am going to start by sewing my satin fabric, just the bodice pieces and my bodice lining pieces together. And when I'm finished, I'll just put them aside for a moment while I sew my satin fabric skirt piece and my skirt lining. Of course, sewing this is very easy. First, I'll sew my darts, then match my notches and sew my side seams together. I can sew my back seam on my lining, but I don't sew my back seam on my satin skirt. That's very important. I don't want to sew it yet because I am going to install a back zipper. Now for me, and this is also a good idea, be sure to finish all of the raw edges with your serger. Now that that's done, I am going to work on pleating my chiffon for my skirt overlay. Okay, so pleating. Getting the pleating just right is so simple. I have a video that can help you make the perfect pleats. So go ahead and check it out. And in the meantime, I've attached the pleated chiffon to my skirt. Now I can attach my cowl front to my skirt. Next, I'm going to move on to my interlining. As you can see, I've interfaced my interlining pieces, all done. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach them together. Now that all my pieces are together, it's time to add boning to the wrong side of the interlining. And to do that, I'm going to use this wriggling boning and these wire cutters to cut and round off the ends. And to further protect my fabric, I'm using extra wide double fold bias tape. Okay, so here's how I attached my boning to my lining. There's different ways to attach boning. You can center it. Some people do that. They center it at the seams, and that's fine. But for this project, I am attaching 2 pieces of boning on both sides of the seam. I'm going to attach them to the seam allowance and then stitch them to the interlining. When I'm done, then I'll just go ahead and attach my lining. If you look at the inside, it's nice and encased. And then you have your lining. Okay, and you won't see the interfacing, of course, because it's going to be on the inside. And there you have it. All done. Very, very, very nice. Okay. So now here you see I have my skirt portion attached to my cowl bodice. And my next step is to attach my interlining and lining to my cowl bodice. I'm going to attach right side to right side. So I'm going to do that by matching my seams and notches and sewing a 1/2 inch seam. I'm going to start my stitch by sewing from my back seam to my side seam. I'm going to stop and then back stitch. And I'm going to do this on both sides. So now would be a good time to think about your straps. She didn't want spaghetti straps, and she was certain about that. She wanted them to be wide, but not too wide. So go ahead and think about the design of your straps. These are about 1 inch. So now also notice that I did not use sliders on my strap. Instead, I measured the exact fit so that the strap would fit snugly without being too tight and without falling off her shoulders. Trust me, she danced all night with no problem. Now once I finished my strap, I attached it to my cowl right at the pleat. So you can see here how I attached it right at the pleat. I did that so I could angle the strap in the same direction as the pleat. So once I did that, I could now sew my side seam on my cowl. And I only stitched as far down as my side seam, and then I back stitched. At this point, I am almost done. I'm just going to go ahead and install my zipper and then make a nice baby hem or rolled hem on my chiffon skirt. Creating a baby hem is very simple when you follow a few important steps. The first thing that I do, and I think this is an important step, this is one that I never miss. First, what I do is I go ahead and I press my hem up about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. That'll do. I want to have a nice crisp seam because I want this crease to work for me. Then I'm going to stitch very close to the edge like this. So you see how close that is? This is very important. Also, what you want to do is make sure that you have a very, very sharp machine needle. Okay, so make your fold, press it, and stitch very close to the edge, and then take your time. Just enjoy it. Take your time and get it done perfectly. Once you finish stitching all the way around, you're going to need to trim very close to the thread with a pair of very sharp scissors. Make sure that you do not cut through the thread. The next step is to roll the hem over and start stitching very close to your first stitch. And this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so that's it. That's what it took for me to create this gorgeous drape front dress. It's beautiful. It's a midi dress with a chiffon front, pleated with 1/2 inch gorgeous pleats and a satin cowl. I really love this. I think that you're going to enjoy making it. So go ahead and send me some pictures. I'd love to see what you come up with. Until then, thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.